Hi everyone, welcome back to week 2, day 1 of our homework discussion. We saw in Arlene's last teaching session how John was viewing culture with a wide-angled lens. And then in our homework this week, he zoomed in with sharper focus to look at individual hearts. And it got me thinking about our culture and how we idolize celebrities. It seems that if a celebrity wears a certain brand or drives a particular car or drinks a specific soft drink, that our culture responds by buying it. It seems like everything they do and even say is celebrated. We're bombarded with images of these people we don't know but like to think we know, doing everyday things. And we seem as culture to eat it up. Because whatever they endorse sells, be it their product, their politics, their agenda, their fame and connections make them powerful. They have access that ordinary people simply don't have. And sometimes they can even come across as being a little bit arrogant about their position. In today's homework, we saw Jesus encounter a powerful individual. Let's talk about this man.
Well, Jesus' encounter was with a Pharisee named Nicodemus. And as a Pharisee, he would have been very concerned with right living. So both for himself as well as for the Jewish population at large. You see, the Pharisees wanted to make sure that if you were born a Jew, you lived as a Jew until you died as a Jew and entered the kingdom of the God who chose the Jews.
So Nicodemus had a privileged position in just being a part of God's chosen people. And he had the role of being involved in interpreting God's law for his people and ensuring that they follow it in all parts of their everyday life.
Yeah, and then if they didn't, the Pharisees actually had the power to discipline anyone who broke the law.
Privilege and power. How often do these two things go together?
So many times, and Nicodemus had both. He was part of this group called the Sanhedrin, and they were comprised of Pharisees and Sadducees. They were headquartered in Jerusalem, and Rome had given them the power to enforce internal Jewish law and deal with internal Jewish affairs and issues.
Privilege, power, and connection. So now John has set us up for an encounter between Nicodemus and Jesus with these threads woven into the background. What happens when Nicodemus comes to Jesus?
Well, we read in John 3, verse 2, it says, he came to Jesus, so Nicodemus came to Jesus at night and said, Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the miraculous signs you are doing if God were not with him.
Do you get the sense that Nicodemus is coming to Jesus in arrogance?
It seems like he is. He uses words like, we know, we're sure, and something for us to be aware of when we're reading the scriptures and speculating about the motives and actions and intentions of other people is that often what we speculate, it's drawn in part from our own motive, thoughts, and intentions.
And thankfully, this isn't the case with Jesus. Jesus knows what's in the hearts of men and women. Even when we're attempting to come to him under the cover of darkness, when we're trying to hide those things that we don't want to become visible, he sees it all clearly.
So knowing Nicodemus's heart, how does Jesus respond?
Jesus says to him in chapter 3, verse 3, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. And so Jesus is saying that spiritual rebirth has to happen for there to be spiritual sight and to gain access to God's kingdom. Access can't be assumed.
And Nicodemus likely had lots of assumptions based on his position. He probably figured that access to God, to the kingdom of God, was his right, that he deserved it.
Yeah, and this is where Jesus turns the conversation on its head. Nicodemus comes to Jesus thinking that he has all the answers, but Jesus tells him, as we saw him tell his mother last week in our homework, that there's no privilege of birth for anyone. The physical context of your birth doesn't define you spiritually, not for better and not for worse. But Nicodemus was getting the physical and the spiritual mixed up.
And Jesus, he reminds Nicodemus, you're a teacher of the scriptures. You should have a context for concepts like new birth and life, new life in a spiritual sense. You should have it from passages that you study and teach, like Ezekiel chapter 36 and verses 24 to 27. It says, I will take you from the nations and gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. And I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and I will cause you to walk in my statutes, and be careful to obey my rules.
So Nicodemus, a righteous ruler of the chosen people, is told by the man that he declared was from God, the man he'd said that God was with, that he himself wouldn't be able to participate in God's kingdom unless he was cleansed from his uncleanness and idolatry. This man who has devoted his whole life to pursue right living, he needs a new heart.
Yeah, Jesus told Nicodemus that he was spiritually dead. And the thing of it is that as Nicodemus sputters, how can this be? He already knew. He just didn't like the implications.
Because he's a Pharisee, and Pharisees would have believed in the resurrection of the dead. The Sadducees didn't, but Pharisees did. And so they believed in the resurrection of the dead from passages like Ezekiel 37, where there's this valley of dry bones that is raised up into a great army because of the breath of an unseen wind, which is the breath of God. And so Jesus, he is challenging every assumption that Nicodemus has made about privilege and position and power.
Yeah, Jesus shines a bright light on Nicodemus's heart, and he reveals that what's holding Nicodemus back, it isn't a lack of knowledge or understanding. He had both of those. What was holding him back was a lack of belief.
So this is something for us to consider today as we close. What's holding us back from believing in Jesus? Have we made assumptions regarding our access because of perceived position and privilege? Is lack of knowledge or understanding holding us back? Or is it a lack of belief? We look forward to wrapping up this encounter between Jesus and Nicodemus with you tomorrow. Bye for now.
See ya.